We're going to continue today to talk about different ecosystems and how animals adapt to their environment. Take a look at this cool picture of Earth. This is the United States right here in North America, South America. We live right up in here, and just by looking at this satellite view of Earth and Ashburn, Virginia, you can tell that we live in a wooded area as opposed to a desert. And why is that? Because the desert is shown in the yellow colors. The vegetation, the trees, the plant life is not seen. But when you look over here where it's green and green over in our region, you can see the forestry and the trees. Earth is home to millions of different organisms. There's the tiny, and there's the huge. Most of these organisms, mammals, birds, live on land. We took a look earlier this week at some ocean life and life in a coral reef. So today we're going to focus on animals and how they adapt to a land environment. A terrestrial ecosystem is a fancy word for land habitat. It's also a fancy word that you need to know, terrestrial ecosystem. And that covers any type of habitat that you would find on land. That can be anything from a desert to a forest and everything in between. Every animal has a specific place that it lives best, a type of environment that allows it to easily find food and to thrive and to be part of the community. And that is known as the animal's habitat. So let's take a look at the different habitats in Africa. Look again, you can see here the different variations, the way the environment changes across the continent of Africa. So when we say Africa, that really is saying that there are numerous different types of environments and different places where animals live. There are the grasslands. Look at that lion in there. I imagine that grass makes it easy for him to hide and then to hunt and catch his prey. There is the rainforest. It's beautiful, isn't it? Even though we talk about land environments, in fact, some of the land environments like this one can be quite damp. So this is a rainforest in Africa. And then one of the things I think of when I think of Africa is the desert. So here's a desert. Now, you know you're going to have some specific adaptations to be able to thrive in the desert where there is no plentiful water, where there is no plentiful food source. You certainly couldn't go grazing about in the sands of the desert. And finally, there's just kind of the more traditional forests like you might see actually here in Northern Virginia. So animals have adaptations that help them survive their environment. Look at this guy. This is a camel, and you can't really see it in this picture, but camels actually have double eyelids, and this is an adaptation that helps them protect their eyes from blowing sand as they're crossing the desert. And of course, you've probably heard about a camel's ability to store water. The elephant, on the other hand, can be found in the grasslands. The elephants would not do well crossing a desert. They don't have the tools are not to exist and to thrive in the desert. And the same could be said for a camel. He might have a harder time living in a grassland area. The mountain gorilla, they can be found in the rainforest. I don't know, when I look at his face, I wonder, what did that little baby gorilla do? So, baby gorillas are omnivores. That means they eat both plant and animals. And so for them, access to food and a diet rich in plants is something readily available in the rainforests of Africa. And then finally, just in the forest of Africa, you'd find an animal like this African leopard, and they like to climb up in the trees and stay in the treetops, and that's both for their protection and how they hunt. So take a look again at the continent of Africa and remember what we talked about at the beginning. And look at this and take a minute, see if you can identify where the forest areas are in Africa and where the desert areas might be in Africa. It's a little harder because the cloud cover in this picture covers a little bit, but you can see the vast deserts of Africa, and then where there's the green is where you would find the forests. Now it is your turn to show me what you know about ecosystems. Remember what we talked about ocean ecosystems. Well, we talked about population and we talked about communities. Population is the same kind of animal. So, for example, let's think about giraffes. So a bunch of giraffes together would be a population. But if you went down into the grasslands of Africa where you would also find elephants, then that population of giraffes would become part of the larger community. Think about the ocean ecosystems that we learned about. We learned about the coral reefs. And you know, when we talk about a water ecosystem, what we looked at there was ocean, salt water, but there's also the pond. I think we looked at that in the first video. Has a very rich ecosystem. A lake has a rich ecosystem as well. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to work with your partner, the two of you together, using Pixie. Create a picture of an ecosystem. It can be land or water. And we're not going to do a bunch of research, so you can just think about what animals you might see together. So here's an example. This is a coral reef. This is a drawing. You're going to do yours in Pixie. And it shows the different types of things that you might find. You would find, of course, some coral growing in the coral reef, maybe a sea turtle, some different fish. Then there's also just like some fish plant life, that kind of thing. So what I want you to do is create a picture for me of an ecosystem that includes different populations of animals living together. And if you have the opportunity to show any special adaptations that the animals may have, for example, the camel in the desert, go ahead and add that too. You can add some text to go with your picture. And we're going to take about 25 minutes to get this done. So get started.